A few years ago, I was shaken awake in my room on the 8th floor of a hotel with floor-to-ceiling windows near Tokyo Station. Opposite, just a few meters away on the same level, was an office full of young men and women in white shirts and dark suits. It was early morning, and as the first waves traveled up the buildings, I saw everyone in the office opposite instinctively freeze, arms outstretched, searching for balance. And then I saw that I was standing like that too, frozen, arms flexed, in limbo. I realized then that something happens to space in an earthquake, because in that moment we were all together, suspended inside the thrusts of energy coming through the earth, all together in an unstable and intimate energy space, a space filled with the fact and possibility not just of mortality, but of imminent death. Something happens to time in that space too. It breaks, ruptures, comes apart. Something similar often happens in moments of heightened danger, as your car spins out of control, or you fall off your bike, or you receive unexpected news of a close friend's or relative's death. Time breaks. It suspends in two senses of the English word, slowing to almost zero and leaving you actually hanging, like particulates spun out of liquid. No longer grounded because the ground no longer is the ground, no longer balanced because there's no longer a spatial matrix to which your senses orient. The pendulum moves back and forth through the liquid without interruption, marking conventional, uninterrupted, unruptured time. But somehow, posed in the face of disaster, it repeatedly reveals normal time as the time that's in suspension. The fragile time that we take to be the safety of the everyday, but which is always just waiting, always ready to be blown apart. When the train finally stops at Marble Hill, it's a joy to be released to the bright summer sky. The crowd spills down the paint-peeled steps from the elevated track, maneuvers through the shoppers and traffic of Broadway, marches across the metal bridge that spans the Harlem Ship Canal, and down to Inward, where I break off toward the marble, the park, the caves, the oldness, and the newness of it all. So often, we act like tourists in our own paths, staring at the world as if through glass, as if its claims were from afar and only other people's stories, distant events that leave us untouched, unimplicated, and unscathed. Now, I realize that I too lived like this when I first arrived in New York, with the desire to become a new person, yet unthinkingly persisting in old habits. Only New York being what it was, those habits would be amplified, more intense, and perilously more rewarding. The governor of Svalbard has designated hundreds of sites in the archipelago as cultural remains. Everything on the islands that was made by people before 1946, now, with few exceptions, off limits, protected from humans but given over to the elements and the animals, consigned to sediment at its own pace. Plastic, metal, wood, stone, memorials, ruins, remainders, turning the entire archipelago into a monument to desire and its follies, and to the saga of primitive accumulation and the brute struggles, sufferings, and satisfactions that accompany it. Perhaps that harshly dissonant inheritance is why, as these remains appear without warning on a lonely-looking shoreline, in the cradle of a hollowed-out hillside, or dwarfed by a sapphire glacier, time can suddenly bend to a surge of unexpected feelings, a sudden dizziness, or some other register of disorientation. History is taking form not only in the shape of bleached skeletons and the emptiness of a landscape once teeming with animals that tourists now scour for wildlife, but in built structures, anonymous and banal, in barely traced outlines on the beach, grassy mounds, and amorphous rubble, and in the equally commonplace equipment that surfaces from the deep quiet and severe beauty of a landscape that has the quality of a theatre from which the actors, audience, and even the ushers have long departed.